How often do you think about being an empty nester, truthfully? Like, think about the age of your kids and where you're at in life right now. And does the thought of all of the kids moving out of the house and you and your spouse having the place to yourself, does it ever cross your mind? I have to say, it rarely crosses mine, but it is a topic that we're going to delve into today. And I'm really looking forward to this interview because I'm not too far from this phase of life. I mean, I have one son who's graduated high school and is going to college, and then twins who are finishing up their freshman year in high school. So I feel like the empty nest thing is slowly, creeping in and coming my way. I'm really looking forward to you all hearing from my guest today. Her name is Leslie McLeod. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about is all the things empty nest, helping our parents as they're aging, managing ourselves as we get older. So let me tell you a little bit about Leslie before we get started. Leslie lives in Southern California with her husband of over 30 years. Together, they own a law enforcement technology company that keeps them busy. When she's not working, she is writing, devouring fiction, or loving on her geriatric rescue dogs named Buster and Bonnie. Leslie is the mother of two amazing adults, a daughter who is a personal trainer and a son who is a CPA. She is the award-winning author of devotions, articles, and a blog, as well as a regular guidepost contributor. Leslie is passionate about supporting empty nest moms and families caring for aging parents. You can connect with her through her newsletter, her Facebook, her Instagram, and also on YouTube. So I will put all of those places to connect in the description box below. But for now, let's get started. Hey, friends, welcome back to the Biblical Monologue Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Flanagan, and I have with me today Leslie McLeod. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Michelle.
I'm so glad that you're here. I'm really looking forward to your wisdom and just gleaning from your experience. And today's topic is about being in what we were calling the sandwich phase of life, where we're raising our own kids, but yet then we're also helping our parents as they get older. So, without further ado, we'll just get started.
Okay. Um, and let's see. Well, I don't know if you needed any kind of background at all on who I am and what I do, or
Sure.
let her rip. We'll just let her rip. I'm a writer and I'm an artist. My husband and I own a tech company, law enforcement technology, and so he's all into technology and I'm all into artsy fartsy. He loves to backpack and sail. So we what I like to do in my free time is paint and write and just devour good fiction and love on my little geriatric dogs. So, um, but I'm also passionate about supporting moms that are in the empty nest and families that are caring for aging parents. So that's kind of my message. Um, and what I thought I'd share today is talking about kind of the midlife triple whammy of loss,
Mm.
which was empty nest for me, aging parents, and menopause all at the same time. And so what I have is a story, if that's okay. Can I tell you guys a story?
Absolutely.
Okay. So when my kids were growing, I live in Southern California. So when my kids were growing up, we had this huge navel tree in the backyard. And the kids and their friends, they used to climb in it. They'd make forts out of it. They take the fruit and they make balls and missiles and whatnot. When it was hot, they'd put blankets underneath and they'd have picnics and tea parties. I don't even know how many oranges I sliced up for soccer practice. So a zillion oranges. So it was a wonderful, wonderful tree. But one day I noticed that it was starting to be kind of in distress and the leaves were curling up. They were turning black and there's a bunch of insects crawling in and around it. And I was concerned. Well, at that same time, I was facing some huge changes in my life. My teenage kids were going to be graduating soon. My aging parents were growing pretty frail. I had hormone changes up the gazoo, and my body, I no longer recognized it. And even our beloved pet dog was kind of getting really slow and slowing down. So
Oh.
with so much that I couldn't control, though, I poured my attention into the orange tree, and I obsessed over the orange tree. It sort of took the brunt of everything that I couldn't control. So by gum, I was determined I was going to fix that tree. So I researched citrus diseases, and I tried sprays and physical barriers around the base and selective pruning. And I wondered, why are the other trees in our backyard fine and this one is doing poorly? So I nothing seemed to help. I prayed over the tree, and I begged and I bartered with God about my tree, and I laid hands on it. And I boldly proclaimed, "Tree be healed," and nothing helped. So, but one day I was walking my little elderly dog, and honestly, Michelle, I'm not prone to hearing the voice of God, at all per se. I read the Bible, but hearing his voice in my head was unusual. I happened to be walking my dog that day, and I sensed a distinct message. And it was God saying, "I'm teaching you to say goodbye gently."
Mm.
And I understood in his kindness that God was preparing me to let go. And
Wow.
I said, oh, okay, but can't you do that without killing my tree?
Right.
Please. But then it was summertime, and our family went away on vacation, and it was our last one before the kids moved out. And it was a great trip. But as soon as I got home, I rushed to the backyard to see how the tree was doing.
Yeah.
Nearly all the leaves had turned yellow and fallen off, and the
Oh.
branches had no fruit, no flowers, no nothing. And so I burst into tears. I had hoped that maybe I had misheard God's words, and there
Yeah.
might still be a chance for my orange tree. So I made an appointment with a professional tree guy to come on out and check it out. So he comes in through the house, and he looks through the sliding glass door into the backyard, and he goes, "Well, there's nothing wrong with that tree. It looks perfectly healthy." And I said, "Not that one. Look over there." And he goes, "Oh, oh, that one's history."
Oh.
Oh no. So I went outside so he could take a closer look at it. He inspected it, and what he said was that this beautiful tree that we'd enjoyed for decades had been on borrowed time all this time.
Mm.
Apparently, our yard was part of a commercial orange tree grove. They had taken a healthy, beautiful orange tree and grafted it onto this fast growing weed like root. And
Oh.
the trunks were molded together, but the weed like root was choking it out all this time. And eventually it was just going to choke the healthy tree from within. And so I said, "Well, so there's nothing I could have done to save it, right?" He goes, "No, I'm afraid not. It was just a matter of time."
Oh.
Well, I thanked him, and I was actually relieved because I had tried everything, but the outcome was and had always been out of my hands. And
Mm-hmm.
his prognosis confirmed God's message to my heart. So over the next few weeks, I tried everything to cut the tree down. I didn't ask for help. I rented some shears from Home Depot, and I just spent time, and I got scratched and thorned and whatever, but I was determined to just take care of this tree and process through. I'm thinking about loss. I'm thinking about grief. One of my friends was dying of cancer at the same time. I'm looking at all these things down the road, and spending the time with this tree and kind of helping say goodbye to the tree was a gentle way of anticipating and processing the loss that was, coming ahead in my life. So I came to terms through that process with the fact that I can't hold off inevitable change
Yeah.
and the pain of loss. And what God allowed, I could somehow face.
Mm.
So when my kids moved out, I was still devastated. Being mom, as you know, it's not just a job, it's an identity.
Mm-hmm.
So they moved out at the same time, both of them. And I just wandered around the house rudderless. I felt like in the book of James where they talk about the wave of the sea blown and
Yeah.
tossed by the wind. That was me. I'm just blown and tossed about by the wind. But God brought along three surprising blessings through this process and through this season, this sandwich season of intense growth and loss and change. One of them was God had thrown me a rescue the year before. when I signed up for my first art class. And as I painted, I developed a wonderful new identity and a deeper connection with my mom, who is also an artist.
Oh, that's so
So
neat.
as I'm painting and I'm exploring this, really fun part of myself that I'd never developed before, I would send her photos of my paintings. And, my husband was encouraging me with the painting. And that relationship with my mom really helped fill my hole in my heart as my own role as a mom was changing. So that was a
So
blessing,
neat.
that came along, and that was right before I was going to need it. So,
Mm.
and another blessing that was kind of surprising was renewed closeness with my husband. Our family had been complete for a long time, obviously. So, but there was something, I don't know if this is something that you're dealing with or not. Not everybody does, but I felt like my loss of fertility was a loss of sexuality, and I felt like I was no longer desirable.
Yeah.
So
Menopause kind of wrecks
it,
everything.
it just wrecks everything. It just wrecks everything. It
Yeah,
does.
I understand that and relate to that. Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
100%. It does.
Okay. So you do understand. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, but the kids moved out, and so we had the house to ourselves. We had some time to ourselves, and it gave us a chance to reconnect and rediscover each other in ways that we hadn't really since becoming parents. And it was almost like a second honeymoon period. So,
That's, that's awesome.
so that was a nice surprise, right? So that was another
Yes.
blessing that God threw my way.
Wow, that's
That just
great.
a few years after that was when it really got tough, and my mom landed in the hospital with an overdose of a blood thinner that she was taking.
Ooh,
And my kids' independence, they had moved out, they were on their own essentially. It allowed me the freedom to move into the role of caregiver with my brothers and sisters.
what a blessing.
Yeah, yeah. And so I was working still full time, but my husband was supportive, and that's where I was needed. So,
Mhm.
it was in God's grace and His timing that I was able to be kind of freed up to be, what my parents need me for. My dad was falling apart at the same time. He was getting Alzheimer's. So,
Oh,
for a really intense 2 to 3 year period, my family of origin became my focus. With
yeah.
my kids, they were supporting me while they were saying goodbye to their grandparents. So it was tough, but it was beautiful, and it was God orchestrated. Um, my daughter even helped me pick out the outfit that my mom was going to be buried in,
Oh,
and so we kind of shared that really tender, beautiful moment together. Um, so those are just some of the things that happened during that period, and knowing that God was in control was huge. That one of my favorite Bible passages during that time was from Ecclesiastes, where there's a time to weep and a time to laugh and time to mourn and a time to dance. So, even though it was an intense period of loss and change, it
mm,
helped so much knowing that God was steady and God was in control, even when I felt like everything was just shifting sand under my feet.
yeah.
He gave me surprising moments of intimacy with my parents, with my siblings, my husband, my kids. And we laughed and we cried and we laughed some more. We forged some memories and bonds that strengthened us to travel kind of the road ahead.
And were your parents close to you? Were they local?
Like geographically, they were about an
Yes.
hour away. My
Okay.
my other sister was about the hour the other direction. So we
Oh,
between the
okay.
two of us, whenever there would be a crisis, I actually packed it. Like, you have a getting ready to have your baby, you have a bag in your car ready to
Mhm.
go. I had a bag in my car ready to go whenever they would call and say, Mom and Dad, or Mom fell, Dad's having a crisis. So I'd throw the bag in the car, and I would,
Off you
zip up
go.
there, maybe stay for a day or two or more. We had, paid caregivers, but they couldn't handle everything. Yeah. So
Wow. It's so neat how you talked about how these things kind of happened and that they just sort of lined up to where it allowed you to be where you needed to be. And as you were talking about that tree and just fighting so hard to keep that tree alive, I was just thinking about all the things in my life, what am I fighting to keep the way it is when
right,
it's going to change, and there's nothing I can do, to change that. Like, I guess a good question for you would be like, what advice would you give to someone who's in this phase of life, like I am right now, and they're they're just trying to figure it out. Like, where am I needed? What do I, how do I fill in here? Is there a need? Am I, it's like all these
Yeah,
questions go through your mind about where you're needed most and
right,
can drive
right.
you nuts.
Yes, it can drive you nuts. And the answer is there's no answer. There is no right answer.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest gifts of grace that you can give yourself is just tossing that out the window, knowing you're not going to get it right because there is no right. It's too much. You're dealing, especially with aging parents, like we started to talk about.
Yes.
There is no playbook. You want to fix everything. I wanted to make them healthy and young and viable again. Well, they're in their 80s. That's not going to happen. And
Yes.
I thought we could fix the problems. Well, anybody with some perspective and history and maybe medical, understanding would look at where they were at and know we're on our last legs here. And
Hmm.
so really my focus might have been just to maximize our time together and help them sort through their end of life process. But I didn't know that. I was trying too hard to fix everything and make it all better. And
Yeah.
so,
Which is it's only natural because your whole life you see your parents one way,
right.
and as they start to change and obviously you change.
Yeah,
It's hard to accept that things are changing and that they're not as young as they were once were, not able to do the things they
right.
could. My mom has had a stroke, and so there's just a lot of things with that. We just are kind of watching out for her and making sure that she's got everything she needs. And my
Right.
dad thankfully is good about making sure that she gets her medicine. But then you think about my dad, and he's got to take care of himself too. And so I appreciate what you said, is that we can't reverse it, we can't stop it, we can't,
Mhm.
it's
And it's
that
so
time.
important and you can't be all that for everybody. You
Yes.
can't be 100% for your kids. And if you're working, you can't put 100% in your job. Hopefully, if you're married, you've got a husband that understands and
Hmm.
is supportive and knows that you just don't have enough to cover all the bases right now. And when you're pouring a lot into your parents, something's got to give. And then there's your own personal health and sanity, which might be in peril at this point too, right? So,
Especially
so
when menopause is at play.
oh my gosh, all that at
A
once.
whole
It's just
thing.
like this. Wow, wow.
Oh, that is an experience for sure.
Yeah, yeah, we could
Yes.
talk a long time about just that, but
Yeah.
all this at once. The main thing is to just give yourself a ton of grace and know that you're doing your best and that God's got it and He's got it in control. And He gave me so many, surprising little moments and little blessings that I took away and that I remember and I cherish.
Oh,
That
that's wonderful.
I couldn't have created. I mean, I maybe if I tried to imagine um, the best end of life scenario for my mom, and we would, I'd sit at her feet and take notes or what. I didn't do that. I wasn't there for that. I couldn't, be that intentional about it.
Yeah.
But God made sure that I had those little experiences with her and with my dad and with my siblings as we negotiated the hard decisions
Mm.
together. God was there. He was he was there, and I had to rely on him to be where I fell short, where I didn't have the answers, where we as a family were tussling and struggling with consensus. God was there, and so it was just a huge blessing to remember that and to lean on Him, knowing that I didn't have everything
Yeah.
all together like I would have liked.
And that's like that where you said about leaning on God. I mean, that's really what it's about, regardless of what we're going through. And it's such a great
Right,
reminder that, he should be the source of our strength regardless. And it's easier said than done sometimes, because when you're in the thick of it and you're raising kids, or your kids are, leaving the home, and all the things that come with that, and all the emotions like you were talking about, when your kids left at the same time, that would be so hard. Like, it'd
it
be like,
was.
whoa,
It was devastating. Like,
they're
well, who am
gone.
I? What do I do now?
Yeah. And men, like my husband has such a different take on that. He's so like, good, that's what they're supposed to do. That means they're growing up and you know,
Right.
and and I get that too. I see that, but like the mom side is
Yeah,
you
you get
just
it here, but the
yes.
heart is so
Yeah.
invested in them. Yeah.
Always, always, and forever will be, which, is the cool
That's how
thing
we're
about
wired.
being a mom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
wow, that is so encouraging. If you like looking back at kind of some of the things you've been through, like, is there any advice that you would give to moms that are younger and maybe not even really thinking, you know, one of these days I'm gonna have an empty nest and I'm gonna have all these other things to deal with. I mean, I guess you just take each phase as it comes, but like if someone is kind of nearing this phase, I know
Mhm.
giving ourselves grace, but is there anything you can think of from your own experience? Like, is there anything practical or that?
Yeah. One thing that I think would really help as you're, and you're just immersed in raising your kids, especially when they're teenagers and you're running around to, support them in all their various
Oh,
activities
yes.
and stuff. It's really hard to think of the next chapter. My husband lives in the future, so he had no problem with that, thinking like, okay, pretty soon. Well, I live in the moment, and so it's enjoying those moments, it's cherishing those moments, it's capturing those moments,
Mm,
whether it's through pictures or putting them online or whatever that you can visit later. So a lot of that is just, um, don't spend those days, months, and years of your children at home frivolously because it is going to be, over before you know it. I know everybody says that, and it's hard to imagine when you're in the middle of it, but just soak it up, enjoy it, and, you know, don't anticipate too far down the road because God will help you with that as you get to that. But one little thing that did help me was what I mentioned was the art class. If you've invested so much of your identity and your time and your every all your resources into parenting and mothering, there may not be a whole lot left, especially if you're working as well and you've got just a ton of demands. For
mhm,
me, um, finding something else, something that you've always been interested in, or something that you really love that you've never taken time to do, start that now. Start that now before
mhm,
your
good.
kids, move out. And to me, it was huge because I started the painting, and
Mhm.
maybe for you, it's learning a musical instrument or a new language or leading a Bible study for the first time or going back to school or, taking up gardening or running or whatever, something that's interested you, but you've always been so busy taking care of everybody else that you've never bothered to invest in yourself in that way. I would really encouraging you to do that. I'm so thankful that I took the time to find that one evening I could do a Wednesday night art class. So that was it. I found the only one in town, and I
That's great.
became part of a group, part of other adults doing something fun together. It gave me that surprising, identification with my mom. So take the time to invest in yourself and who you want to kind of develop and become as your kids fly. You can fly too.
That is such a good piece of advice because, then your kids don't see you as just sitting at home being sad that they're gone. They see that you're doing some things too, and
Yeah,
you're living your life and you're learning a new skill, and it says something to them as well. Like, you can always learn new things, and you can
yeah,
always, there'll be time at some point in your life to check something out that you're interested in. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll definitely keep that in mind for sure because,
yeah. Yeah.
won't be too long.
No, no. And even
Mhm.
as adults, even if they have moved out of the house, they're still watching you. They
Yeah.
watched how I and my sisters and brother loved on our parents and cared
Oh.
for them. And they kept that in their, they know that's how a family needs to do, and when I was developing my writing and stuff, my son asked me to call him one time, and I said, I'm sorry, I'm under a deadline, I'll have to call you back later. And he said, no, that is super cool. Look at you at your age with a deadline. how cool is that? So he was
Oh,
pretty
that's
impressed that
super cool.
I'm working on this big project, and he thought that was neat. I'm not just mom.
Sitting around, yeah, like
Yeah,
cooking and doing laundry. You're doing
right.
other things and helping other
Yeah,
people and
and it's
yeah.
a good model, for your kids.
It is. Well, I love the way you said that they watched you and your siblings take care of your parents and just that relationship that the grandkids have with their grandparents is so important if you're able to. I know we are so blessed to have the grandparents close within like 30 minutes. And
Mm.
so they come to the sporting events and the band concerts and they get together with the boys for meals. My mother-in-law just took them all out for lunch over the weekend and just to hang out with them and spend time with them and they give each other a hard time and it's a lot of fun. So, and then, two of my boys have planned to help my dad mow this summer because they've got a little bit of land. And so they're already like, hey, we're working on a mowing schedule. And they talked to him about it and they brought it up. And so it's just been really, really cool to watch them as they grow up to keep the relationship that they had when they were little with their grandparents. And
And grow it. They're
yes,
becoming more aware and more thoughtful.
yes,
I'm big and healthy and strong here, and I see my grandparents aren't quite so much, so
I
they're
can help out.
evolving. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
super neat. You are blessed in that way.
Yeah, it's been really special. I know my husband and I both growing up, we had to travel to see, family like on one side or whatever. So
Right,
we remembered that, and we were like, if we can at all have that, the grandparents close, we really wanted that to happen. And we're just so grateful that we are able to live close. And I know not everybody can do that.
right,
It's
right.
just,
And so when
yeah,
they need you more, later in
yes,
the coming years, you'll be there, you'll be available, and they'll
that's
be
right.
available hopefully too to help out. and
Yes.
to, and to enjoy and know that you're soaking up memories here now.
Mhm.
It's not, I'm just seeing time isn't something that you can just spend frivolously, especially as you're approaching the end of your time with your parents.
Mhm.
You really cherish those moments because
Yes.
they're limited.
Yeah, we do. We enjoy it all the time that we get with them, even if they just
Yeah,
show up for a lacrosse game or something. It's just
all
like
the memories,
so
yeah,
always so glad that they could come and those it's just fun. And like you said, all those moments like Sunday lunches or whatever it is we do, it is good to just soak that up and enjoy it and,
yeah.
have everybody together. So well, is there anything else that you would like to share or any other?
I don't I don't think so. That was mostly it. I mean, there's just so much during this season that you guys are, if you're not dealing with it now, you will be. And so you don't have to get too crazy looking down the road, but just know that there will be a time when, your body's changing, your kids are moving out, your aging parents, and um, you will be able to handle those things with God's help and God's grace, and um, just being kind of aware of it, knowing that you've got sisters that are in the mix with you. Um, Go ahead and talk to your friends and talk to your sisters and reach out and know that there's support, and you'll be able to negotiate that time with joy and blessing and surprising grace.
That is so helpful. And it's just it gives me such peace, just, we know like the Bible tells us that we always have help and that to turn to God and that Jesus is our help. But it's really neat to hear someone who's already been there, who's been through the things that we will come up against. And you have had that help and that, the Lord has walked with you through each of these things. And it's, living proof. It's just a testimony to his word. And so thank you so much for sharing this today. This has been so encouraging to me, and I know will be to anyone else who listens.
Thank
So
you so much. It's been a pleasure.
I just have one last thing, and I don't know if you have anything or not, but I love practical tips and tricks, like those hacks that you see that make life easier. So if you have anything like that, we would love to hear it. If not, that's awesome too, because you've shared so many wonderful things today.
I don't really have too many, hacks and that's more for like when your kids are in your house and it's been such a long time. I do remember and I'm not so much about, um, keeping my house clean and organized and, meals and whatnot, all that stuff. But I care about relationships. And so when my kids were in junior high, one thing that I did do was take them out, each one individually out of class for lunch
Oh,
once a week.
that's
And
neat.
it was terrible. We would just drive through the McDonald's, and just blast through. We had just a limited amount of time to grab a hamburger, throw it down their throat, and throw them back at class. But during a really turbulent time, that was fun and that was important. So,
I bet that's a special memory for them too, because they got out of school for a little while and
and they got one time, and it was fun. When
Mhm.
the junior high is such a pressure cooker, just to
It
get
is.
ready and get a little taste of love there in the middle of your week of your day. So,
That's
um, think,
awesome. I love
thinking
that.
little traditions like that when your kids are going through maybe some struggles, some tough seasons, then just create something that's kind of you know out of the box a little bit, that they will remember.
I
Important.
like that. So, and that's one of those things that you can be creative with on your own.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Whatever whatever that looks
whatever
like for
works for
you.
your kids, whatever they like, that's
Yeah,
great. Thank
yeah.
you.
Sure, sure.
I know I'm over here thinking, what can I do? I'll have to come up with something.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, well, thank you so much for joining us today. And I will make sure that I leave all the places we can find you, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and your website in the description. And so, if you don't have anything else to add, we will just say, have a great day, everyone.
Thanks
Thank,
so much
thank
for having me.
thank you.